What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it is Friday, which means we have the entire weekend to look forward to play a bunch of games. In fact, let me know what games you'll be playing over the weekend. I think for me, it's mostly going to be a lot of Crisis Core and then some High on Life sprinkled in there. But we do have several bits of news to go over today to wrap up the week, which does include Sony confirming what their big holiday 2023 title is and kind of giving us an overall picture as to what next year will be like for the PlayStation. We'll go over that. Also, we are going to be talking about a big RPG that has now been announced for the Switch and PlayStation 5. And we're also going to be taking a look at Valve in an interview as they talked about what they feel like could be next for a Steam Deck revision. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Nintendo and some new Amiibo that have now been dated, which we can see this posted up over on Twitter from Nintendo of America saying Super Smash Bros. Amiibo for DLC fighters, that being Sephiroth and Kazuya. They will be released on January 13th, 2023. You also look forward to the release of Pyra and Mithra in 2023. They also showed off like a double pack, I think, in Japan for Pyra and Mithra. But either way, I think Sephiroth is the one that a lot of people were looking forward to, and it's kind of cool to see one for Kazuya as well. I will admit, I'm not really that interested in Amiibos much anymore. I guess when they first came out, there was that big Amiibo craze that was happening, and some Amiibo were worth ridiculous amounts of money. I remember there being lines of people waiting for these things to get in stock at like a Walmart or Target or wherever, but not as much anymore. I am curious if people out there are still collecting them like that, though. I did ask in the poll, which we'll take a look at later on in the show. For me, if I see them on sale and it's maybe a, I don't know, franchise that I like, Metroid Dread as an example, they had the Metroid Dread Amiibos that were on sale for like 70% off at Best Buy, so it was $8 for the double pack. So I did pick that one up just to at least have it, but not really rushing out day one to pick any Amiibos up anymore. Also, we did get confirmation from Capcom as to when the VR mode for Resident Evil Village will be releasing. We can see this over on Twitter from Resident Evil saying, get up close and personal, VR mode will launch as free DLC for Resident Evil Village and Gold Edition on PlayStation 5 alongside PlayStation VR 2 on February 22nd, 2023. So it'll be there for the launch, which is good because this is probably one of the more compelling titles for PlayStation VR, only because Resident Evil 7 was very good in VR, and that was with that original PlayStation VR, which looks downright archaic compared to VR headsets now and obviously the PSVR 2. And I wouldn't mind going back through Resident Evil Village in VR with the new headset from Sony. I'm still waiting for that big game that makes me go, okay, it's time to get I need the PlayStation VR 2. Really, they've built up, I would say, just a nice selection of games that if you end up with the headset, oh, it's cool to check these out. But yeah, Resident Evil Village would probably be one of the big titles I would look to fire up with that new headset along with Horizon. Oh, and it looks like Bluepoint could be teasing their next game. At least that's what a lot of people are taking from their holiday card, which a lot of studios and publishers will release these fun pieces of art as their holiday card, obviously heading into the holidays end of December. And we can see Bluepoint's, which there's 4 different boxes here, obviously presents. We have a shield, an axe, and a sword. All these referring to different games they've either run support on or just outright worked on, like Shadow of the Colossus they worked on, Demon Souls, and they did help out with God of War Ragnarok, which is why the axe is there. But then there's one other present that's closed still, and a lot of people are looking at that saying, okay, that must be their next game. And it doesn't really tell us much, although, hey, that looks like a cardboard box. Just saying, maybe Metal Gear is in there. And I mean, we know that there have been talks about Bluepoint maybe working on their own original game. So it could be a sequel to a running franchise right now. Could be a brand new IP. They could be working on 2 different projects, and one of them is a remake. So a lot of questions here, but it does appear, at least based on the holiday card, they have something ready to reveal, probably in the near future, maybe as we head into 2023. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and 2023, as they have been working to set up next year with certainly a lot of third-party games that they either have timed exclusivity for or just seemingly outright exclusivity. But they do have one game that we've kind of been talking about here and there that appeared like it was getting set up to have some sort of information drop, and that was Spider-Man 2. I mentioned I thought they would do a PlayStation blog post, and guess what? They did a blog post, which we can see this over on the blog, where it says the year's end is over the horizon, which means 2023 is about to begin. While 2022 has gone out with a God-sized bang thanks to God of War Ragnarok, that doesn't mean 2023 has nothing in store. And the rest of this blog is mostly going over several titles, which includes Forspoken. We also have Hogwarts Legacy, Final Fantasy 16, some hardware with the PlayStation VR 2 and their DualSense Edge. But the big thing they really wanted to point out is that, yes, Spider-Man 2 is set to release in 2023, and we have a release window. They say, let's kick things off with some exciting news from developer Insomniac Games confirming the release window for the web-slinging sequel. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 launches on PS5 in fall 2023. And to me, this kind of, I don't want to say cements their overall release schedule for 2023, but it's certainly building up what I would say their snapshot looks like currently, with Forspoken, Final Fantasy 16, the marketing for Hogwarts Legacy, and their big holiday title, that being Spider-Man 2. All right, so the good news here is, another part is, really Spider-Man 2 there were still a lot of questions around if it would be on the PlayStation 4. Remember, Sony has pulled this at different times, especially with Gran Turismo 7, where that was originally talked about as a PlayStation 5 game, and then the PS4 logo shows up later on in a trailer like a year after its announcement. Even things like Horizon Forbidden West, they leaned into the idea of it being a PS5 exclusive, and then, oh wait, it's also on the PlayStation 4. So I think a lot of people have been wondering when Sony would make that complete jump to next gen, or current gen, really. Remember, we're multiple years in now for just developing on the PS5. We see Horizon DLC just before the new platform, and it also looks like Spider-Man 2 will indeed just be on the PlayStation 5, which is interesting on its own, because I'm curious if this will feel like a PlayStation 5 only game, or if it will still kind of feel similar to Spider-Man Miles Morales. That is obviously a smaller title compared to what we're assuming Spider-Man 2 to be. Will it just be the overall visual fidelity that we look at and go, okay, this is definitely a PS5 game? Could it have to do with the overall world building and traversal using that SSD? A lot of questions there, but good to see that, yeah, one of their biggest, probably their biggest property overall, with how well Spider-Man sold on the PS4 and then Miles Morales, is setting up for that holiday 2023 release. I'm thinking this September or October, right? Fall obviously makes it a little easier, but I'm kind of thinking maybe September Spider-Man 2 releases, and that'll just be 3 months after Final Fantasy 16 drops. So again, they are setting things up for PlayStation that I think this is going to be a lighter first-party year for Sony, and they'll mostly leverage the third-party timed and just full-on exclusivity to get to 2024, when I think a lot of their studios will be ready to release their games. I'm thinking of Sucker Punch, right? That being a big one. Bluepoint, we just talked about them, and others. But who knows? Sony apparently has a bunch of live service games also in the works right now, and something like Last of Us Factions comes to mind there. So maybe that's one that could sneak in right before the end of the year, or be a nice surprise over the summer. Next up, let's talk about a couple of big-time RPGs that have been announced for the PlayStation and Switch. We'll start with the first one here. We can see this over on Gematsu, where they say Falcom has announced Ys Memoire, The Oath in Felghana, a high-definition remaster version of Ys, The Oath in Felghana for Switch. It will launch in spring 2023 in Japan. I have not played this game. There are a lot of Ys titles, obviously. We're up to Ys 9 and soon to be Ys 10. This released for the PSP in 2010. This just mostly being a high-definition remaster, and obviously released to a system that has a very large install size, which we'll come back to that here in a second with Falcom and some of their history around the PlayStation and the Switch. But then we also have this being the big one, Ys 10 Nordics. That's announced for PS5, PS4, and Switch. It's due out in 2023 in Japan. Now, I am mentioning this in Japan for both of these titles because it takes a bit of time for them to localize, so they'll typically release Ys in Japan first, and then months or even a year later, it'll show up in the US. But they did have several screenshots for Ys 10, and I think it looks pretty good. It seems like they definitely have a bit more when it comes to traversal, as you could see them almost in, this is like a hoverboard or something they're flying around in. So they do show some nice outdoor shots. They show you on a boat sort of sailing around there. So I'm thinking just exploration in general of the world will be taken to the next level here. I enjoyed Ys 8. Ys 9 was okay. I feel like as I played through it more and more, I just kind of fell out of it a bit. But 8, I feel like in recent memory was probably my favorite one. So Ys 10, just based on what they're showing here, is reminding me a bit more of 8. And it is interesting to see Falcom now announcing something like the next big Ys game and bringing the Switch in seemingly day one, whereas before it was kind of like, well, we're mostly used to PlayStation. We'll get to the Switch maybe down the road at some point, and then it gets late ports and these different things. But now it appears Falcom's kind of got the message, or they've sort of caught up with their development for the Switch. And that's kind of what I was figuring was happening with Falcom, even though they would say things like, well, our base is with PlayStation. That's kind of what we've been used to, and that's what we're sticking with. Still felt like, I mean, they're smaller, so it is probably harder for them to also bring the Switch in and get a port out right away for it, as it is a different architecture to develop for. Seems like they're getting a bit more experience, and again, kind of getting the message as to where Japan is going when it comes to consoles. And once again, you can see it on the sales reports, the Switch coming up on 30 million sold. Hard to ignore if you're Falcom when it comes to the E series, especially a brand new one in like the mainline series. So hey, exciting stuff here for Ys fans. We'll just have to wait and see when we get some sort of release date for the West. Next up, let's talk about Valve and that Steam Deck, which has proven to be very popular, and their supply situation is mostly getting resolved to where you can order a Steam Deck through Steam and it shows up, from what I'm seeing, in a couple of days to a week or so, which much better than where it was before, which was mostly a floating time of it's going to be in this quarter a year from now. Well, now we're starting to hear plans maybe of what would be next for a hardware iteration with the Steam Deck, and it might not be what you're expecting necessarily. We can see this posted up, this over on The Verge for an entire interview, and there were some other parts of this that included things like the noisy fan or the battery being hard to replace. Both are things that they are working to fix over time. But a second-gen Steam Deck is coming, but maybe not a Pro. They asked specifically, what would you want to improve on the Steam Deck? And I'm sure there are many people who are more power users when it comes to PC who are like, well, I want it to be more powerful. In their mind, though, they were thinking of the screen and the battery life. They say right now the fact that all Steam Deck can play the same games and that we have one target for users to understand that kind of performance level to expect when you're playing, and for developers to understand what to target, there's a lot of value in having that one spec. Mostly talking about, hey, there are a lot of handheld PCs that are coming to market, and some companies put out a new one every quarter, so it is scattershot when it comes to performance and what to expect. So while some of them may be more powerful even now than the Steam Deck, believe it or not, the Steam Deck is a known entity, and through way of a lot of their updates with software, has become really a favorite for many people in the handheld PC space. So rather than focus on these incremental updates, which they could do, they could go up to the next generation chip and maybe you get 5 or 6 FPS better than what you did have. I think in their mind, hey, if we improve the screen, maybe go to an OLED display, if we can get the battery life and have an extra hour or two there, that would be a better jump in terms of a revision. So, I don't know, a Steam Deck Slim, or maybe they just call it something else, Steam Deck Lite, that would work to improve the overall experience much more than spending the money on a chip. That's not to say they don't mention the idea of making a jump when it comes to performance. It appears though they would look for a more generational leap, something that would be much more noticeable than going up to the next model number for the AMD chip, again, giving you a couple of frames. Oh, and they did also talk about the Steam controller that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I know there are many people out there who liked it, and we can see this posted up where they say, I think it's likely that we'll explore that because it's something we wanted as well. Right now we're focused on the deck, so it's a little bit of the same thing as the micro console question. It's definitely something that where we'd be excited to work with a third party or explore ourselves. They talked about what sounded like the Steambox situation, which is a terrible idea because they want other third parties to come in, and we saw what happened there. It's much better if they do stuff in-house like they have with the Steam Deck, where there's one spec, they can market it completely that way, and they don't have to deal with, I would say, a bunch of, well, they had like Alienware in there. They had, I think they had Lenovo. There were so many Steam boxes out there, and no one knew which one to get. Whereas here, you get a Steam Deck, and that's kind of it. So I'd prefer for themselves, that being Valve, to work on a Steam controller too and see what they can improve, especially with what they've learned with the Steam Deck. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a bit of a surprising announcement as it has to do with Amazon games and Tomb Raider. We can see this press release that they posted on their website, where they say Amazon Games and Crystal Dynamics today announced they have reached an agreement under which Crystal Dynamics will develop a new multi-platform Tomb Raider title, with Amazon Games providing full support and publishing the game globally. So I'm a little confused on this one. I mean, they do mention it's a single-player, narrative-driven adventure that continues Lara Croft's story in the Tomb Raider series. Okay, that's pretty straightforward there. I'm not sure why Amazon Games is getting involved here when they're part of Embracer Group, and they have several publishing labels. They could put it with Deep Silver, or I'm sure THQ, or others. Why is Amazon Games doing this? Unless, hey, they show up with a pretty good deal in place with just throwing money at it, and Amazon just wants to obviously have their name there and then have full distribution rights to it, which I guess means they could make a deal for what PC platform it goes to, like the Epic Games Store, although Amazon has been moving a lot of the games that they have worked to publish to Steam, so I guess that should be fine, and they just want their logo there alongside of it, and of course to collect royalties and all these different things. It's just a little odd. I mean, I guess Tomb Raider was started before the deal was done between Square and Embracer Group, so maybe it was just in this weird situation and Embracer wasn't necessarily all gung-ho about putting a lot of money out for something like the next big Tomb Raider game, and then Amazon comes in. I don't know if this is necessarily going to affect Tomb Raider in terms of the direction of it or development. I kind of see this as Amazon showing up with money and then obviously expecting a return, but I guess we'll see. It'll definitely be years before we actually get a look at what exactly this new Tomb Raider is going to be. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what's the feeling on Amiibos going into 2023? 3% say I still collect every Amiibo that comes out. 34% say I only pick up ones here and there if they look cool. And then 62% say I don't collect Amiibos anymore, or I never did. Yeah, I just feel like the Amiibo craze is kind of over. I mean, I don't even know if people use them that often, or if they are just things that are purchased as more or less statues. And I guess if you're buying them in the sense of these are statues I'm going to put up on my shelf, they're actually not terribly priced then, because I've seen statues, yes, they are much larger, but we're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get them. Whereas these, in terms of their pricing of like, what, $20 or $30 for some of the larger ones, and the quality you get, it's not too bad. Just have it as a fun thing you can put up for display. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Voss saying, adding on to today's question of the day, also nothing for Nintendo regarding Sports Story as well. We are in the middle of the month, and all we still have is that release window of December. While I'm hoping for a stealth drop, I'm beginning to wonder if this is going to slip into 2023. You know, I thought about that as well when I was going through for the Nintendo 64 game for December that's kind of missing. I was like, wait, what happened to Sports Story? That is supposed to come out this month, and it's the 16th. Then there's no Sports Story. So maybe they will shadow drop it. You figure it's happening any day now. I mean, next week, that's kind of it until you get the Christmas. And from what I understand, the certification process for a lot of these companies kind of goes on hiatus for like 3 weeks or so for the holidays, as obviously people are in and out of the office or just outright on vacation. So you feel like it's done, it's certified, it's ready to go, and they're going to just shadow drop it. I'm fine with that because I'm already sold on the game. It just seems very weird that we're halfway through the month that it's supposed to release in, and we have nothing so far. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Sony's 2023 that they're working to set up now, with apparently Spider-Man 2 being the big anchor for the holiday season. Let me know about that. And then also, what about the Steam Deck, specifically the next iteration, whether that's just a revision? Do you like the idea of them maybe working on things like the screen and battery life as opposed to just putting a better chip in there. Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.